Well, I mean, in fairness, Senator Corker, Senator Coburn, a bunch of people, Senator Schumer, have said, now I know it's not House Speaker Boehner, but on the other hand, you're not President Obama. They have been willing to come out and say, we're willing to raise the tax rates all the way up to the Clinton rate, 39.6%. Can you give us some specifics of things that you would consider cutting, both in terms of social programs and in terms of entitlement reform?
Well, the bottom line, Chris, is that would be negotiating against ourselves. President Obama has agreed.
Well, but isn't that what they just did?
No. The bottom line is that Democrats, led by our president, and almost uniformly say, here's our first $1 trillion, $1.2 trillion of getting to the $4 trillion. It's revenues. It's up to the Republican leadership, prodded correctly and boldly by Senator Corker and others, to say they'll go along with that, and then we'll start negotiating on the other side. It makes no sense for us to negotiate against ourselves.
Do you buy that, Senator Corker?
No, look, Chris, we've got to have a $4.5 trillion solution here, and really, I know Senator Schumer. I've talked with him numbers of times personally. He knows the general things that we need to do, and candidly, most Republicans and Democrats do. I do think it's time for the president. He knows that there's a growing body of folks who are willing to look at the rate on the top 2%, but that's only, could be $400 billion, it might be $800 billion, depending on how you deal with that. And many of us who are fiscal and conservatives are beginning to see that we can end up with a lesser revenue increase by agreeing to that. The shift in focus and entitlements is where we need to go. And again, it's a shame that we're not just sitting down and solving this, but Republicans know that they have the debt ceiling that's coming up right around the corner, and the leverage is going to shift as soon as we get beyond this issue. The leverage is going to shift to our side, where hopefully we'll do the same thing we did last time, and that is if the president wants to raise the debt limit by $2 trillion, we get $2 trillion in spending reductions, and hopefully this time it's mostly oriented towards entitlements and with no process. I don't want to kick the can down the road. I think Senator Schumer and I both know that what we need to do is solve this problem now.
Well, let's talk.
Wait
a second, because we're going to get into that in a second, Senator Schumer. Senator Corker, you brought up the debt limit, and as you know, part of the president's demand is that he be given the right to raise the debt limit by himself unless Congress disapproves by a 2/3 vote in both houses. Is that a deal breaker for Republicans?
Well, look, let me go back, Chris. I mean, let's face it, he does have the upper hand on taxes. You have to pass something to keep that from happening. We only have one body. If we were to pass, for instance, raising the top 2 rates, and that's it, all of a sudden, we do have the leverage of the debt ceiling, and we haven't given that up. So the only way the debt ceiling, I think, is given up is if the president comes to the table, talks with Speaker Boehner about real entitlement reform. Without that, there's no way, in my opinion, the debt ceiling is going to be given up. And so then you go into January and February with a negotiation about spending reductions, which is where we want to go. So, look, I mean, he can decide. I agree with Senator Schumer. We're not going to go over the fiscal cliff, to use that terminology. Something's going to happen before year end. Hopefully, it's a comprehensive package that solves our nation's problems, and then later next year we deal with tax reform in a revenue neutral way. What I do not want to see us do, go ahead, I'll stop.